character is defined by what do people say when you're not around? Because that could be you're here and dude, Josh is the man, he's the coolest guy, and you're around like, dude, fuck that guy, he's the worst, right? That's not good culture. So in my opinion, what do your team members say about the company when you're not around? I'm talking about people that are just non-leader, team members. Then you have the leadership executives and then CEO, right? The founders and board members, whatever level you're in. What do they say when you're not around? That is the culture. Culture is like the character of your company.
Omer, welcome to Founders and Empanadas. Bienvenido.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Cheers.
Хорошо. Хорошо. So, Omer is my fellow Russian Jew from Atlanta that is also in the staffing world. I remember when we were at dinner and we discovered the layers of inception of our parallels. We're like, what is going on?
Yeah, which is funny because I really thought Josh was a Colombian dude, the whitest Colombian guy possible. And turns out he's like a brother. So here we are.
Yeah. But great to have you on. And there's so many parallels that I see in our stories and how we kind of got into the space. But to kick things off, I'd love to, if you could share with the audience about how you first came to Medellin and got into staffing.
Yeah, I've been in Medellin since 2020. I moved here in 2021. And man, it's been such a journey living here because I'm sure just like you, when we first got here, you didn't think you were going to live here. It was just like a vacation spot, there's some pretty girls here, whatever. And then I got here because the company I was working for at the time, they wanted to celebrate a really big year in 2019. And we booked a March 2020 trip. And if people remember March 2020, it was a cursed month, I should say. And the 20 people that were supposed to come, only 10 ended up coming. And we had this massive house. And we spent a weekend together. And then literally a couple days after, they were like, hey, if you don't go back to the States, you're going to be locked in. And everybody's like, oh, locked in. So 5 of us ended up staying here and the other 5 went back home. And that's where I really fell in love with Colombia for the first time. And then I ended up coming back 4 more times. And I was like, okay, I'm flying from San Diego to Colombia. There's something here that I don't have in San Diego. And just ended up moving here. And right around that time is, I mentioned this in the past, I started looking at the amazing talent here, right? Not talking about the women, but I'm talking about just the talent of workers and their work ethic and their English and their relatability and just being able to understand someone American. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of people here that are really good. And that's where we started hiring a lot of Colombians, a lot of people from Bogota. And that was the seed that was planted to me just by being here coincidentally during COVID.
So. Yeah, I love it. Let's get into the empanadas. Coming from Atlanta, they have a little bit of a hash brown taste to it. Do you get that, right?
Yeah, very Waffle Housey.
Yeah, a little Colombian Waffle House. Casa de Waffle.
Yeah, Casa de Waffle, yeah.
Amazing. So you got here, you discovered the talent. By the way, my March 2020, I was escaping the Philippines. I flew out right before the Taal volcano erupted. So I almost had the parallel story to you, but Philippines version. But yeah, once you were kind of setting here and making your first hires, when did you realize and kind of get that aha moment that, hey, this could be a service that I help other companies with?
Yeah, it's actually interesting, man, because the first people I hired were actually Ecuadorian, which at the time, I don't want to sound ignorant, but to me that was all the same, Colombians, Ecuadorians, Venezuelans. I didn't know the difference. Obviously today, knowing the difference in culture, that even the Spanish is different and so on and so forth. But I would say right around end of 2020 is where I really started taking this more serious because I realized, I come from the marketing agency world, and the last thing I did before going all in on the business is I was selling a coaching program helping agency owners scale. And the coaching program had literally everything. To date, I believe that coaching program has helped over 100 people hit $100,000 a month. So and some of them literally started $5K. Some of them came at a bigger level, but the coaching program had everything. We had 4 calls a day, from sales to marketing to systems. We had a 100-hour course. We had a community of 500 plus entrepreneurs. There was meetups. There was everything. The one thing that was not there is how to hire, right? They give you systems and SOPs, but nobody talked about how to hire, where to find these people. It was always Upwork and Fiverr. And look, Upwork and Fiverr is great. We have nothing against them. Neither do us. And honestly, they're the pioneers. Without them, we probably don't have what we have today. However, the way I see Upwork, it's kind of like McDonald's. It will fill you up, right? And it's everywhere. However, is it the best quality food you're going to get? Is it the best quality process you're going to get? So I realized I was going through Upwork and I was like exploring it and I was like, man, this is so hard to find people. Why as an agency owner, as a business owner, you should not be spending time going through this process. You should be spending time building the business and growing the business and increasing your revenue rather than going and finding a $3, $4, $5 an hour person. So that was the first seed that was planted to me. It was just, okay, I'm working with a lot of these agency owners. I'm coaching them on sales. Maybe there's a way I can help them hire their first people. And the first client I ever got, his name is Eric Fosnat. He actually lives here in Colombia and he became a really good friend. The process that he went through is completely different than the process today. It was like, hey, I have someone here. And he didn't even interview her. He just hired her. Yep. And almost 5 years later, she's still with him. Wow. And she's like 3 to 4x her pay. And it's been awesome. And he's been one of my close friends. He's hired like 20 people from us. And that was like a good, very lucky, but very good experience just because I was like, oh my God, I'm changing 2 people's lives here. Yeah. The business owner and the candidate. And I don't know which one's a bigger impact, but you feel it more with the candidates. You truly do, because the community that you're impacting, their family, and the way I see it, it's so overlooked because you and I are so, we're building the business and we've stepped out of a lot of the stuff that we were doing in the beginning. But that's something that's overlooked, and I have to remind myself, and I get reminded when I do podcasts because I talk about it, is when you hire someone in the Philippines and they get a job and they're happy and they're leveling up, the impact they make on their community is so massive because some little kid or, someone in high school gets to see that and be like, wow, if I learn English and if I finish school and if I just work hard, I can also have this amazing life and marry the woman of my dreams and things like that. And we overlook that. But the reality is you and I have that same thing, but like with Kobe Bryant and LeBron James and like people that are a little bit less attainable, but we get inspired. And I think their inspiration is seeing another, virtual assistant and another person that's on it from the same cloth as them. Sometimes it's a family member being able to get that job, level up, and live a great life elsewhere.
Yeah, really, COVID's kind of unlocked a new lifestyle for so many people around the world, and the biggest thing that kind of is my fuel every day is being able to connect candidates with cool tech companies and great U.S. cultures to work with, when they might have worked at like a large BPO that was a bit more soulless before. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
one.
Especially having to drive to work, right? That's a whole different thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The traffic in Bogota is no joke, and Manila is even more intense. So.
Yeah, I don't. You told me that last time, and I don't even know what that means. Yeah. Honestly, to me, I'm like, how does it get even worse than this? This is crazy.
Yeah. Yep. So, Omer, you've since scaled to Philippines, and I know you've also gotten a lot into Egypt. Mm-hmm. What are some of the main differences you've found in the talent profiles across all the different countries you're in?
Yeah. So we love great talent. I don't care where you're at. You can be in Bolivia, you can be in Egypt, you can be in Nigeria. I love great talent. And I would say one of the biggest things that really surprised me is Egypt. I think I've told you this. Egypt, when I went to Cairo in 2022, I went to Giza and I spent about close to a week there. And the people that give you a tour, they're very nice people, but they don't speak English. Like, it's very little. So I thought, being ignorant, this is Egypt. This is where I'm at, because there's a lot of tourists here. You'd think, oh, they speak good English. Absolutely. I've never been more wrong in my entire life. Egyptians might have some of the best English I've ever heard, outside of maybe the Mexicans that live right on the border that speak, they're basically speaking English every day. But literally, they speak such perfect English. They're very, very sales savvy people. So they're, they understand the cold calling world, sales world, and they speak great English. Where Filipinos, what we've experienced, we've hired them for appointment setting roles and things like that. They do good because they're really hard workers. But I believe that their talent a lot of times is a lot better with things that are a little bit more analytical, more repeatable, and then they need to think of ways of how to make it simpler or automated rather than client facing, because their accent is so different than anything anyone is used to in the US, where an American person is more used to an Arabic accent than a Filipino accent, right? And I think there's a direct correlation sometimes between, someone giving you a call and it's a random number and being a scammer, and then it's a Filipino. And you don't even know, this person might be offering something that you need. You don't know that. But for the more repeatable tasks, data analytics, executive assistant role, things like that, we found that Filipinos are amazing. Latinos and Egyptians, we found client-facing and speaking with clients. They speak, I almost want to say they have no accent, but they have a little bit of an accent. When I, interview them and I see my clients interviewing them, I'm like, whoa, this is you sound like you're American. Like you could easily lie to me. I would be shocked that you live
It
in.
could be your neighbor living in Miami.
100%. And then that's been really impactful. And I would say the best thing about hiring Latinos, you're now more experienced in this, right? And we've hired probably about 800 people from Latin America. The biggest advantages are, number one, time zone, first and foremost. Number two is the cultural similarity.
Yep.
I mean, I believe last year, could be wrong, but I believe Colombia alone had about 3 to 4 million tourists alone, just Colombia. Not talking about like Bolivia and Venezuela and all these other countries. I don't know about Venezuela, but Argentina, for instance, right? So they're very used to American culture. Obviously, like I said, the time zone and just the overall like accents. When people hear a Colombian, they have no idea if it's a Mexican. 99% of Americans have no idea, unless you speak Spanish, the difference between a Mexican and a Colombian and an Argentinian. So for them, they're like, oh, it's just another person that's Latino, you know? So that's a huge, huge advantage. And that's why client-facing roles, whether it's sales or even customer service or account management, we like the Latino talent over anything.
And I'll add that they're watching the same Netflix shows and they grew up watching the same Disney movies. They understand the references, understand the inside jokes with American teams.
100%.
Awesome. What would you say are some common misconceptions that founders have about hiring in each of these different regions?
The biggest misconception is that you don't think someone in another country can do the job as well as someone locally. Like, that's the craziest thing to me. And honestly, it's crazy to me today. I'm sure it's crazy to you because we're so used to it. But I mean, I'm going to take it back, 6-7 years ago. The term virtual assistant was like, so nobody really knew about it. Nobody really understood it. I didn't even know what a virtual assistant was until 2018. And it's because I worked for an agency that had 2 of them. So the biggest misconception is thinking that you need to hire someone locally or American, doesn't have to be local, to do the same job that someone in the Philippines, that someone in Colombia or Egypt can do at a much cheaper rate. Because you were like, wow, this person in the US asked me for $4,000 a month, X amount of vacation days, and benefits and insurance and all that stuff, right? And this person in Colombia, for the exact same skill sets, and some of them are even more experienced, asked me for $7 an hour and remote. You know what I mean? So that's a huge misconception. I would say that's number one, first and foremost. Another one is the people who have not either tried or have tried and just haven't done it correctly, but entered the remote world space. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, they want to hire Filipinos or Colombians and they have to put them in an office. And I'm like, I don't know, it makes me sick just thinking about it, because yes, are there benefits to an office? You and I both agree, absolutely. You can build culture much faster, decision-making is a lot faster, you can catch mistakes a lot faster, yes. But is that absolutely 100% necessary? No. And you know what? We just had lunch, we talked about this, but a company like Deal, that's worth $800 million, that's valued at $12 billion, they did $800 million last year, they have 5,000 team members all over the world, and they're 100% remote. Like, and that's just the one that I know. I'm sure there's other ones that I don't even know about. They make even more money. So I think people either haven't done it correctly because or they haven't even tried, because that just that mindset of someone waking up and like brushing their teeth and then going to their desk sounds messy, or it sounds like disorganized or something where it just doesn't drive them. Where in reality, it's like, dude, it's such a blessing. Like, it's the biggest blessing in the world to be able to wake up, brush my teeth, eat breakfast, whatever, and then start working. And then also, I believe more people will work more hours because they're at home. They'll feel more like, when they're in the office, they clock out, they're going home, they're not working again. Absolutely not. But in your home, you can actually work a little bit more. You can work weekends. You can roll out of bed at night and just like get things done, whatever. And I think that's that these little things get overlooked. And in today's, as society continues moving, and we've also talked about like your introduction with AI and things like that. Dude, it's like the future of workspace is remote. I don't care what Elon Musk says. I don't care what Patrick and David say. I love them both. But I just don't see the necessity of having an office that you force people to go to an office. You can have an office, go high level. It's a CRM that we use. They also value at $2 billion. They have a PO box. And when I went to their office a few years ago, I came there and nobody was there. And I'm like, where's everybody? They're like, oh, they're all remote. I'm like, everybody's remote. It's like, yeah, we have, at the time they had like 400 employees. I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right. Like, there's something here.
Right. Yeah, very aligned with you there. And I'd love to hear more, Amir, about how you build culture and accountability with your team, especially across so many different time zones.
Culture, 100% starts with a founder or founders, right? and then it goes down to the executive team, leadership team, and the rest of the company. So the first things first, no matter what company it is, this is what we do when we work with clients, no matter the level, is what are your core values? Like, what does your company stand for, right? What's the mission and what's the vision? Right there, that's the foundation of your company. What is your vision for this company? What's the mission of the company? And what are the core values? If you don't have that, you don't have culture. You can say, oh, I like people and they need to be working hard and like being proactive, but you need to have literal written down core values, mission, vision statement. And that's the first things first. Number two, it's then asking yourself, right, as a founder, what company do I want to work for? Like if I am, obviously as a founder, it's very easy to clock in, clock out because I own the company. But if I was an employee, and the thing for me is the reason I think I relate to so many of my team members and we have such a high retention rate, people want to stay there. Like, in 5 years, we've only had like maybe 2 or 3 people quit. Majority of people that have not worked out, it's because they just didn't work out and we made the choice. It's because I have been an employee a lot longer than I've been a business owner, right? A lot longer, like 10 years versus 3 years. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So because of that, I as I build a company, I'm putting myself in their shoes a lot of the times. I'm like, does this meeting make sense? Like, is this a good meeting? Was this a valuable meeting? Should we not have this meeting at all? Just an example, right? It could be how you approach certain situations. And I believe one of the things with culture that doesn't get talked about enough is it's very easy to pinpoint good culture, but bad culture is where it's like, what exactly does that mean, right? And in my opinion, it's when you have people talking behind your back. They have side conversations. There's toxic environment. There are, people are not hitting their numbers, and that's accepted because of an excuse. And it's just it's a culture of mediocrity, right? And even worse, a culture of just failure. So I think it's just, having the calibrations with your team members, making sure everybody's on the same page. That's the most important part in my belief as a CEO, is making sure everyone is aligned of where we're going. Now, sometimes you have to kind of get people back in line because they might have a different vision. They see things, and that's okay. I want people that, if you hire high-level people, A players, they're going to have their own ideas. They're going to want to do certain things. And it's at times it's okay to explore, like maybe a different solution, maybe a different process, different system, whatever. But as a CEO, the goal is to always get everybody aligned together and move as a unit. And that's the hardest part, especially as you grow and you have 300 employees. I have 20 employees, like whatever the number is, like that is the hardest part to consistently do. And then, when we both know people that have 1,000 employees. It's like,
it's a lot.
It's a lot. And, but obviously they're not dealing with 1,000 people, but they're dealing with the executive team. So going back to your question, I just think how if you're not around, so this is one of my favorite quotes is about character. Character is one of the definitions that is created by someone that told me about this. So I never looked it up, but it made sense. Was character is defined by what do people say when you're not around? Because that could be you're here and dude, Josh is the man. He's the coolest guy, and you're around like, dude, fuck that guy. He's the worst, right? That's not good culture. So in my opinion, what do your team members say about the company when you're not around?
Yep.
That right there is the definition of culture. And I'm talking about people that are, I don't want to say the bottom, but people that are just non-leader, team members. Then you have the leadership executives and then CEO, right? The founders and board members, whatever level you're in. What do they say when you're not around? That is the culture, because culture is like the character of your company.
I love that. And I think also just by having very clearly defined values, it makes it so much easier to hire and also fire when it's given the context of misalignment with values or strong alignment for candidates with the values.
100%.
Yeah, that's a tool I've used to be able to make firing decisions a lot easier.
Yeah, because firing is one of the hardest thing ever. I had to fire 12 team members this year because we were overstaffed, which was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It like broke me. I cried on the call. I felt so inhumane. And I was like, I had one rule. Like I was so prideful of like, I've never fired anyone unexpectedly. I was so prideful of that. Yeah. And then I think there's no business in the world ever that has made it that's never fired anyone unexpectedly. That is impossible. And I just have to accept that fact. Obviously, I don't want to do that ever again. And I think there's ways where you can avoid that for sure. But man, firing is a whole different topic. It's like you can break people.
Any best practices you found that have made the process a bit easier, or recommendations you give to clients?
I would say the biggest thing is giving people a warning and then putting them on a PIP, performance improvement plan, so they know it's coming. That's the biggest thing. If it's unexpected, they should in a sense, you need to open up and explain to them, tell them the situation and what's happening, and make it very direct. And what I used to do very wrongly is I made it very emotional. I'm like, man, I really don't want to do this, and then and it's like the worst thing, because they know that you don't want to do it. And you don't want to make it harder because it's already hard. So like I learned from Layla Hermosi about this, and it's basically like empathize with facts and be direct, and just understand that this is a shitty situation for everybody involved, but it's much shittier for them than it is for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, I mean, you and I both know, I think the reason you and I get along together is because we both empathize with our team. Like, I genuinely care for them. And I know CEOs that, like, especially when they're hiring offshore people, they look at them as less human, and that pisses me off. Like, there's nothing that I can't stand more, because these people in the Philippines, bro, I don't give like, you're Filipino, you're Indian, you're Colombian American, like, we're human. We're all on the same level.
Yep.
I don't care how much money you make. You can never disrespect anyone. So I think some people are a little bit too direct, but it's just empathize with direct approach and understand what the ultimate outcome is. And then, if they've done a pretty good job, it's always easier to fire someone easier when they don't perform. The hard part is when they perform and they're not a culture fit. That's the hardest firing you can ever have. They crush it. They're hitting KPIs. They're doing everything, and then they're just not a culture fit. It's like, bro. So that's a whole different ballgame. So those are the ones that you have to, empathize with a little bit more, be direct, and so on and so forth.
And I think we're ready for another round of empanadas. What do you think of these guys?
These are good.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Salud. So you're a big advocate of remote work. It's in your company's name. Have you ever worked with a client that was fixated on in-office? And how did you maybe convert them to a remote first type culture? And maybe what were some things that worked and some things that didn't work?
So great question. I have a client right now that we're going through this process with.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great guy. Honestly, my whole team really likes him. But he only wants to hire people in Argentina because they're building an office there. But his goal is, like, he doesn't want to force people to go to office. He just wants to have a hybrid model. So I think one of the best things to do, because the difference between Josh's company and mine is that we're a headhunting company. We find the talent and we place them with the client, where with Josh, they work for Josh and then they outsource to Josh. But so you have a little bit more control of that, right? I don't have as much control. But the way we've done it is kind of a sneaky way. So anybody that's watching this, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. And I kind of warn them. I tell them this. I'm like, hey, I'm going to show you Argentinian talent, but I'm also going to show you Colombian talent and Mexican talent. And sometimes they're going to be much better. So then the question is, would you take a B player in office or an A player remote? What's more important to you? And if it's a B player on office, that means that you value having that camaraderie together. And that's, I still don't like that because we're not local Latinos, we're remote Latinos, and I make that very clear. I also talk to them about the benefits. I'm like, why? Like, why do you build an office? What do you want to do? What are you missing that you're not getting from this? And then I give them examples. I'm like, dude, if this was like 10 years ago, right? It's 2015, summer of 2015, right? Both of us are in our 20s and figuring what to do with life in a sense. Remote work sounded insane. Like, I didn't know anyone that had remote work. Like, I remember people traveling for work, and I'm like, okay, but then they come back, and then it's always like they go to an event or meeting, but they're not like physically working there for a long time. We're talking about 10 years ago. We're not talking about like even that long ago. But today, it's almost like AI, right? It's almost like 10 years ago, AI didn't even, it was like iRobot and like another movie,
Yeah.
But today it's like in our face. And today you have so much proof that this is possible, where you have these SaaS companies that are fully remote, that are worth billions of dollars, and they have nobody in office, and they have a PO box. And it's like, why are they able to do this and you're not, right? It's not a SaaS. Like, I'm just saying, it's not just a SaaS thing. It's like agencies can do this, marketing companies can do this. So I think it's just showing them examples of companies that have done it. One, I think number two, it's showing them talent outside of just their area, right? And explain that to them. And then number three, understanding why do they have this mindset? Because there's a reason, right? There's a reason they have this mindset of, I need to have people in office. I want to build a culture. And, there are benefits of an in-office opportunity, 100%. Like, it's not like, 100% remote, 0% benefits of office. That would be silly to say. That's very ignorant. But I think the pros, it's a pros and cons world. The pros as a remote world, in the remote work world, outweigh the cons, to me, of the pros and cons of in office. So that has really, really worked, man. And just showing them, like, look at this person, A player, in your city, in outside of your city, outside of your country, but then, hey, B player, at best B player in where you want them to work. Which one do you prefer?
Yep.
Right. And I was the last thing I'll say about this is we prefer talent over location. This is my favorite statement. It might not make sense for a lot of you guys. I think it'll make sense for Josh. But I ask the clients whenever we take a sales call, my sales guy, I'm like, if a Colombian lives in Mexico, is he Mexican or is he Colombian? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's Colombian, but he lives in Mexico. But like so do you want someone in Mexico? Like I think that a lot of times they have this misconception, and it's about breaking through that wall and understanding why they have that. And we have a call with a guy on Friday that has an office here in Medellin, and he wants to hire people with us. But I told him, I'm like, if you hire with us, they have to be 100% remote. If you want them to go to the office, it has to be 100% optional. Maybe once a month you guys do something cool, whatever, but it has to be optional. And I made that very clear. He's like, okay, I'm going to try it out. I'm like, cool, we'll work with you. But if you make this mandatory, I'm going to grab them and I'm going to find them another client, because I don't believe in an office job. Last thing I'll say about this is I do believe that when you're starting out your career as a virtual assistant, as a closer, appointment setter, there are benefits of driving to work, to BPO, and learning how to do this, because there is a culture that's being built. There's habits that you're building that are important. Like I built a lot of my sales habits and communication skills when I was working in dealership in 2016. It's the hardest sales job I ever had. Selling cars is absolutely the hardest thing you can do, in my opinion. One of the hardest things I would say. It's long hours. You're dealing with, especially when you're selling Toyotas, you're dealing with like bottom barrel people a lot of times, and just you're there all day. So, but I learned a lot of good things there, right? I learned discovery portion, how to talk to people, how to handle objections in your face. It's like person. However, there comes a time, maybe a year, maybe 6 months, maybe a little more, where you don't need to drive to work, where you don't need to be in an office, where you can do exactly what you're doing at your privacy at your home. So
totally agree. And I feel like for Gen Z, there is going to be a bit of a loss there with both AI replacing a lot of the entry-level roles, but then also what you just touched on, of like being able to learn from others, especially the leadership team.
yes,
I credit so much to the first few roles I had out of college working with tech companies. And it'll be interesting to see how we can recreate it. I'm a big believer in virtual offices to try to get the best of both worlds. I've shown you around a little bit.
yes.
But yeah, it's just kind of how we can still reach and tap into that Gen Z workforce that is kind of like the lost generation out of all this.
It's coming, man. And I'm more worried about the jobs that are being taken away that were, dude, like a 3D designer, it's over.
Right.
It's done. Like you had a job. It's interesting. My one of my close friends who I live with, Iconic Becker, shout out to him. He has an Instagram. It's called AI Conversations, and he just made a post about this Chinese AI platform that helps you create 3D design. And I clicked. They had 1 million views in like the last week, which is crazy. 6,000 comments, and I clicked on the comments, and dude, they're bashing him. They're like, "How dare you? If you hire 3D design, da, da." And all these people, dude, all the time, I'm talking about top 30, 40 comments are people bashing the fact that there's a platform that does this. And I'm like, dude, you're either gonna adapt to the times, or you're gonna be lost. So like, you still need a person to create a 3D design, right? It's not like the design's just gonna come out of nowhere. But instead of hiring 5 designers, you now have 1, and they have all these different AI tools. So when my worry is like, that's gonna just ramp up, right? We're talking about designing, then there's gonna be, who knows, copywriting's right around there. Like, what is gonna happen? And is this where we get introduced to universal income? Is this where we get into? I don't know. Part of me is excited. The other part of me is like nervous. I've told you this.
Yeah.
And obviously just being able to implement this, with our team members, because it's like, what's gonna replace people is people that don't use AI.
Yep.
That's the first thing. I don't know when AI is fully going to replace people, but there will be a time for that. So
I'm a big believer that, the next generation of BPO workers, they're going to be supervising agentic AI instead of being doers themselves. And it's a different talent profile. So that's kind of one thing that's staying top of mind for me, is how do we upskill existing teammates that we hired for, empathy or communication skills to now be, looking at AI technical capacity. But it's just such a core skill set. Yep.
Super.
Awesome. So throughout your journey with Remote Latinos, any funny stories come up of weird requests or strange placements that you've had to fulfill?
I'll tell you a few stories. So I had a girl that was interviewed 3 years ago, perfect English, experience, skill, everything. This is a true story. I have this picture saved. On the interview, she dressed professionally, but she had like a little collar, and then she had a tattoo here. It said "fuck," a F-U-C-K tattoo. And I was so sad because I was like, dude, you literally crossed off every single box. But I just think hiring someone with the word "fuck" is a little bit inappropriate.
Right.
So that was one. Another funny story, I would say. I wouldn't say anything funny, just a lot of interesting because we're dealing with people. So it's such a people are unpredictable.
Right.
Today things are good, tomorrow things are bad. Today things are happy, then sad. I would say a lot of we had one. I'd say two more stories. One VA that resume and the video that she submitted, legit. When she got into the interview, it was another person. It looked like them, but she stopped. She didn't speak English. And at the time, our client success hiring consultants were on interviews with a client. Now they don't need us to be in there. So everybody was just shocked. Like, who is this girl? Like, this girl just went through our process. She literally didn't speak English. Wow. I was like, I don't know if she got nervous. And another one, I had a client that was getting onboarded in his bed, shirtless, with his girl or wife on top, like on a phone.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, bro, you just paid us a lot of money. Like, what is this going on? So I'm telling you, we deal with people. Not only do we deal with people, we deal with people in different cultures, completely different time zones, different come ups, different languages, different level of income. But at the end of the day, the one thing that's taught me is like, dude, people are all the same.
Mm-hmm.
We're all silly gooses. We all got like our own.
We're all faking it in some way.
Yes,
or other.
exactly. We're faking it until we make it. We all really want to take care of our family. We all really want to. I would say majority of people, one of the things that we ask when they get onboarded, I ask about their dream. I share my dream. I'm like, hey, here's my dream. I want to travel the world. I want to donate this much money. I want to take care of my mom and my dad, all that stuff. And then I tell them what their dream is. And you realize everybody has a dream of like taking care of their family. They want to travel. And I'm like, oh, you have the same dreams as me. Maybe mine are like, oh, I want to live in like France, and then yours is like, I want to live in Korea, right? Maybe that's like more attainable, but like it's we're all the same people. That's what it made me realize and appreciate humanity even more. Yeah.
Your story of a candidate showing up as a different person reminded me one time of we had someone, for some reason they applied under their sister's name. And then their sister also applied. So we had like two people with the same profiles, but different people interviews. Like, what's going on here? I love it. And then Amira, this is a question I love to ask everyone. But what's one strongly held belief that you have that you'd say 90% of other founders would disagree with?
So you told me about this question earlier, and I was kind of thinking, I was like, do 99%? I don't know. But for me, I think just from the founders that I've dealt with, I believe now today, you need to delegate fast. Like, you got to get yourself out of so many different things, because I believe in the beginning, people are like, I'm going to wear all these hats. I'm going to learn this. Delegate immediately. As fast as you can, delegate, even if it hurts your margins in the beginning and you're not like as profitable as you should be. But if you find the right people, right? Now, I'm not saying overhire and hire 400 people, but delegate the most important things that are completely opposite of your skill set rather than learn them.
Yep. And
it was interesting because when I went to Alex Hormozi's workshop about 2 months ago, we spoke with Ed Turney, who is one of their top consultants. I believe it's their top consultant, actually. Ed was mentioning that he believes that a founder, a CEO, should know everything up until $10 million. Like, up until 10 million, you should know everything. You should build everything. You should do. Not like you need to not delegate. And I was kind of like, man, I know so many founders that don't know shit about sales. They will never take a sales call ever, but they're making a lot of money. So I think it just depends on the type of level you are. And I think that if you're good at understanding hirings and how to hire and people in general, I think the two things that I highly recommend: one, have a business partner. I know you built, your work solo. I can't imagine building Remote Latino solo, right? And in another world, like maybe we have a third partner and we would be even farther. I think you've gone very far. But there's another world where you had a partner that's as ambitious, as smart, but has the opposite skill set of you. Who knows how far you'd be, right? And if you look at all the biggest companies in the world, all the Fortune 500, there's not a single one of them that's owned solely by one person. Even if it's like 2, 3, 5%, whatever, 0.5%. So one is partnerships. I would never try to build anything by my own. And then number two is I would try to delegate as fast as possible the complete opposite skill set of mine rather than trying to learn it and taking the time. And, you need to have a basic level understanding to it. Like, I understand systems, I understand high level, I understand make, I understand what's happening. Do I need to know every single thing inside of make.com and like how to build this thing and how to connect it? Like, no.
Right.
So for me, that's something that I think a lot of founders are like, oh, I'd rather, wear all the hats.
Nope. I'm totally on there of trying to find people that are better than you at whatever department you're looking to.
Specifically, the complete opposite skill set.
Yep.
Like if you're good at sales, the odds of me finding someone better at sales, I'm not saying it's impossible, would be awesome, but I'm less my mindset is a little bit less systematic and operative. So I'm going to find someone that's really good at systems and really good at operations and very organized and things like that.
Yeah. How do you help founders think through quality versus cost when making hires overseas?
I ask them, what is the cost of not having this person, right? Because they either have not had this person at all, or they've had someone and it was the wrong person. So number one is understanding that. Number two, understanding how long can they go on without this type of person? Like, how long can you not go on with an executive assistant, right? And number three, like helping them understand that if they do hire an A player, like, here's what's going to happen. This is what's going to get crossed off your list. Here's the time back you're going to get. Here's the sales you're going to make. Here's the marketing you're going to be able to attain, versus like, I want to find someone cheap, right? Like, it's funny, man, when we get on a sales call, we make it very clear. Like, one of the things we say, if you're looking for a cheap service, this is not the service for you. We're not a cheap service. We're not a $2, $3, $4 an hour VA. Our bottom barrel, like absolutely beginner, is $5 an hour, which in Colombia is pretty good. It's like $800 a month. That is like level one for us. Realistically, it's about between $6 to $8 an hour, sometimes even 9 and 10. But guess what? In the US, these $10 an hour people, I'm not even joking, they would cost, if they just lived in the US, $4, $5, maybe even $6,000 a month.
Yep.
Easily. So I'm like, you know how much money you're saving? And the fact that you don't have to hire this person remote and you don't have to have them drive to work. They're not asking for benefits, right? Yes, they want to get paid bonuses, commissions, things like that. So I would say that's a big one, man. It's like understanding what you want. And I think this is another thing that's overlooked. And I would say a lot of business owners would not maybe agree with me. I don't think you need to hire an A player as your first hire if you can't afford it. Because a true A player, if they don't get what they want and they come into the company, they see nothing, they're out. So realistically, you might think you hire an A player, but really this is a B player with A player potential, right? And I was just saying this on a podcast. There's really the three people you want to hire are B players, which are more doers, not in the beginning, but the doers as you scale, you have, I'm sure you have a lot of B players that they're going to be B players no matter what. Then you have the B players that have A player potential, and then A players. And your job is to identify which is which, right? And how you identify, like, the B and A is pretty easy. Like, the B is clocking in, clocking out. They're hitting KPI. They're never going above. They're never, sometimes they'll go below, sometimes they'll go above, but they're consistently at KPI. The B plus players and the B players that have potential for A players, they're the people that are going to go above and beyond. Even if they're just hitting KPI, they're staying up a little bit later. They're asking questions. They're showing up more than the others, right? Success is just showing up. Like 90% of success, I won't say just. 90% of success is showing up, because most people don't even show up.
Yep.
They get the job. How many people have you hired? The next day, they're not there.
Right.
It's like they literally, and I know this for a fact because I've seen this, they celebrate getting the job. They don't celebrate getting paid, which is nuts.
Yeah.
And then obviously an A player is, they're already there. They're already hitting KPI and more. They're already showing up later. They're coming up with ideas. They're thinking as a business owner. They're an entrepreneur, right? So I think those are things that you have to really look into. And going back to your questions, it's like, man, you got to ask yourself, like, can you afford an A player, and would an A player work for you? And overall, like, making that distinction and helping you understand how much time you're going to get back. Where's your company at if you do all this thing and you cross off all these boxes? And yeah, it's exciting stuff, but it's also like nerve-wracking because you're making humongous decisions for your business.
Right. One thing I'd like to challenge is, accepting B players that are just hitting KPIs. I found that can in turn foster some A players turning into B players because they see that they're getting the paid same amount or same title as someone that's contributing less. So I've also, both internally at NeoWork and with clients, really take time to look into how can we address those B players or manage them out if needed.
Yeah, I love that. I think in the beginning, definitely. I think as you grow and scale, this is something I learned from Eddie Malouf, and he was mentioning to me how there's going to be a time where you have 200, 300, 400 employees. I mean, you're experiencing this where a B player is, if they're hitting KPI and they have no ambition to grow from that, you have to ask yourself, like, can I find an A player that can come in and do better than this? Or am I okay with someone doing the job?
Yeah.
And that's a big decision. It's not as critical as if your leader is not an A player, that's a problem.
Right. Yeah.
Your manager is not an A player.
That's the big one. Yeah.
That's a problem, right? So in my opinion, if your worst case scenario is someone hitting KPI, you're doing something right. The problem is when your worst case scenario is a C player, right? And they're not showing up, they're all over the place, they're not hitting KPI. That's when it's a problem. If your worst case scenario is someone hitting their KPIs consistently, you're in a good place.
Yeah. You're exactly right on management positions or anyone that's making a hiring decision.
Yes.
Because B players tend to hire C players at times.
Yes. Or at best B players.
Right.
How would they know what an A player is?
Right. Exactly. Awesome. Omer, where can people find you online and find out more about Remote Latinos?
Yeah. So remotelatinos.com, that's our website. We have 2 sections of the company. So we have our headhunting, which we call Talent Hunt. That's if you want our help of finding any of the talent that you want. You go to remotelatinos.com, fill out a quick form, and then schedule a call with my team so we go over the exact process that we use to hire 1,500 plus people at this point. Or if you want to do the process yourself and you have the time, you have the money, you have the energy, and God bless, you want to do it, no worries at all. We have a marketplace. That's app.remotelatinos.com. So app.remotelatinos.com. It's $97 a month, super cheap. We have a 2-week free trial right now. It's going to be ending pretty soon. We're going to make it a week at some point. But right now it's 2-week free trial. And we have about 3,000 to 4,000 candidates have applied. So we don't have that many people yet, but enough to make hirings. And we've already had clients make hirings. So that's something you guys can also check out. And then, if you guys want to connect with me, it's just my name and last name, OMER BLOCH, Omer Bloch, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
Congrats on the marketplace launch and partnership with Deal. I love to see all the growth, man. And
I love it.
Keep doing your thing.
Thank you so much, man.
You want the last empanada?
I'll take it.
Go for it. All right. Cheers. Thanks for coming on.